This is a brief lesson in history about fear and ignorance of extreme weather 500 years ago. Now, as impossible as it is to comprehend events in the 20th century without understanding totalitarianism, it is likewise impossible to understand Europe's 16th century without recognizing the role of superstition. Magic, witchcraft, sorcery, and superstition pervaded every scale of culture, from the smallest corner to the cosmic. Now, an equable climate had pertained in Europe about 1,000 years ago, and by the 14th century, that had deteriorated into a long period called the Little Ice Age. The Little Ice Age saw harsh winters, severe storms, and also extreme variability. That means you could see mild winters and then very severe winters, summer heat waves, droughts, sea storms, and floods. The Little Ice Age persisted about 500 years, abating only in the 19th century in some places. Now, the most severe period of that 500-year period of the Little Ice Age occurred in Europe between 1550 and 1700. That was also probably the harshest period of weather in the last 1,000 years, if not longer. Now, the severe conditions and climate brought about crop failure, starvation, disease, death, and social unrest. But it was already occurring in a period of great upheaval as the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, and warfare battered Europe. Now, how unusual was this very intense period of the Little Ice Age? On the afternoon of August 3rd, 1562, a thunderstorm struck Central Europe across a front several hundred kilometers long. After raging for several hours, the storm unleashed a terrific hail that continued until midnight. It destroyed crops, it destroyed vineyards, birds, and unprotected horses and cows. Diarists then noted something that we hear today. They said for 100 years, such a storm had not been seen. The storm was deemed so unusual in this period of superstition that it had to be unnatural, it had to be supernatural. Thus, superstition and witchcraft bred a precautionary response. Eradicate those responsible for the storm and this period of new storminess. Now, it was well known that people could cook weather with the help of Satan. So, thus did extreme conditions of the severest part of the Little Ice Age contribute to Europe's most horrific period of mass executions and witch trials. This was completely legal, and it was administered by highly educated upper social strata. These are institutionally legalized executions for sorcery. There are many reasons for these trials, but some of them are related to weather cooking, that is, working with Satan to produce these fierce storms. The estimates now are about 50,000 executions across Europe, and no country was spared of this. Now, there were skeptics who stood up, but they were often accused of, or threatened to be accused of sorcery to squash any debate. So legal philosopher Jean Bodin in 1580 noted that witchcraft was the most terrible problem facing humankind. Again, a very modern note. Bodin championed the international attack against skeptics like Johann Weyer. Now, Johann Weyer was a physician, and Weyer argued that the accused sorcerers seemed to be suffering from what he thought were medical conditions we would modernly term mood disorders. He also thought it was theologically impossible for Satan to work through such people to do his work. Weyer then declared that confessions that had to be extracted by torture, because there was very little direct proof of witchcraft, well, these confessions were extracted by torture, and he found this torture immoral. So the response was Jean Bodin decided to accuse him of witchcraft, and so any feeble notes of humane skepticism had to be wrenched out of society. Jean Bodin wrote in response to Weyer's humane skepticism, "Any country which tolerates these skeptics will be struck by plagues, famines, and wars." Now, since it was known that witches caused weather and this unusual weather raged, So did the tortures and executions. How severe did it get? Well, on May 24, 1626, a hailstorm struck central Germany and dropped 1 meter of hail. 2 days later, an Arctic front descended onto Central Europe and bit hard. Rivers froze, grapevines exploded, the rye and barley crops were destroyed. Tree leaves were blackened and fell to the ground and denuded the trees, and people thought it was Y2K. Now, the Lord Mayor of Zeil in Franconia, Johann Langens, wrote, "Everything was destroyed by the frost, which had never happened in people's memory," which was true. Probably a frost that severe hadn't occurred in 500 years. But since it was so unusual, it had to be unnatural given that century's reigning paradigms. Whereupon, continues Johann Langens, whereupon an intensive pleading and begging started among the rabble. Why did the authorities tolerate the sorcerers and witches? The sorcerers and witches must be punished. So punish them the authorities did. In this area of central Germany, in 1626 alone, Bamberg executed 600, Würzburg 900, in Electorate Mainz 900 more were executed, and Westphalia 2,000. That's just a result of the 1626 frost, and those are directly related to weather cooking. Now, science is the only successful means we know of to explain nature, and growth of wealth is the only successful means we have to afford prediction, preparation for, and survival in order to survive extreme weather, which has always happened and always will. But science needs special societal protection, and without that protection, science will just be dialed out, and in its place will be substituted the myths that humans love to create, myths like weather cooking. Thank you.